أنا مغبة اتلي هيبي أبيتون مبسمة بسامة قامة دا خرزن قدا سامة اتلي خات بقتا خيتا بخا ومانا خا موسيقور بشمة جورج سومي قد شريك اللي دا خرز Mesopotamian Night كما شنة وإلى أمان أديم يوما قد خاتش همزم بود شاركتو جو خرزة Mesopotamian Night قد فايلة قبومة جو يرخت طبخ جاسة بيرخا خاية خيتا جو أفانة كاليفورنيا ثيتر وجورج سومي بشينتيت الخرزان عزيزة جورج بداين ديلا جا قامتا خكما جاهيات بوغدت الدا خرزان إن خاية خيتا. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you. في قارة أماكن دم بسيم رابع إلو شركة دوخلو دانو و دم بسيم رابع A&B دوخلو دانا دوخلو تالنت دي مريزي آخر زان وطلبا من فرجاني مكبب ساسا سب أن جوابه يومنا بلشان إنجلسايا اتلي هيوي قد شاركيتو أمن جو رامشت بتناخرين قد انبيتو بقريتو لبلشان أطورايا ماصم جوابنا
خير جورج. Fantastic. George, for those viewers that maybe are watching this show for the first time, Khacha Madiqate, basically how you got started in music.
Okay, so now I don't remember this, but my mom always tells me the story. I was three years old, and I heard somebody playing Happy Birthday on the piano, and I climbed up on the bench and so that was the start. I keep by the age of 5, I think she got me my first keyboard, and you see this picture of me, I look like the happiest little boy in the world. And then from then on, at the age of 7, she put me in piano lessons. And then I hit 5th grade and I picked up the saxophone, started playing in school bands, and that's kind of where I got this whole orchestral element. And then the rest, as they say, is history.
Fantastic. George, you've been involved in the Mesopotamian Night program a few times, and so I can do a quick refresher for the audience that perhaps hasn't seen or heard any of your work. We started in 2010, right? But I think you probably saw either the 2008 or the 2009 event or somehow heard about it, right? Which inspired you to, I believe, from what I understand from Tony Khoshaba, our director, to reach out to him and say, hey, I too am a composer. I have some material that I would love to have on the show. So the first time we actually heard any of your compositions was in the year 2010, which was the Assyrian Legacy, the Rise of the Great Empire, as well as the Majesty of the Hanging Gardens, correct?
That is correct. So I reached out to Tony via email. Mesopotamian Night was gaining steam pretty quickly. So I decided to reach out. I think it was, I subscribed to the Assyrian Aid email list.
Right.
And I don't remember if I replied to that email, which is like a generic server that sends that email. And I said, hey, I'm a Assyrian composer. I actually do this stuff. It'd be really cool if I could get to be with you and give you my
show
pieces.
Some of your stuff, yeah.
That's right. So, I guess kind of the response was a little bit astonishment, I guess. Maybe disbelief that there's this guy, that just rando guy that says, hey, I do this stuff. So I sent him a score, and I think the response was, wow, this is actually pretty good stuff. So, and I've been happy to help with the program ever since.
Fantastic. After 2010, there was a year off. I think this was the time when our director, Tony Khoshaba, was actually relocating from the Modesto Turlock area to San Jose. And then we had a 2012 show, and then you came back in 2013, correct, with the third and fourth movements of the Assyrian legacy, correct?
That's right. That's right. And I did I believe I did a few of the pop selections that year.
That's
too.
correct. Yes, this was the year where we were featuring the Biba and Shamiram Urshan songs, and so it was so just wonderful to see and hear your classical pieces, right? And then to turn around and say, this is the same person that's going to arrange a song such as Shushunla or Rishita or something like that. It was kind of mind-boggling, but it was beautiful nevertheless.
Thank you.
And so, and then you said, "Hey, I'm still not done, right?" And it's not like you took a year off in 2014. It's just that you were distracted by another major project, which is the first, at least on record, the Assyrian ballet, right, called Little Lantern, Lampida Surta. And for those viewers that probably don't know, George Somi wrote the entire music for this ballet. I think it's upwards of an hour and some odd, over 60 minutes, George, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. It's an over 200-page score.
Yeah.
It took me about 3 years to pull together. Definitely my largest work.
Wow. Simply outstanding. George, and by no means am I discounting the Little Lantern, because as I said, it was not only something historical, but also something extremely beautiful. But I want to kind of get back to the Assyrian legacy, because the Assyrian legacy has such prestige, if you will. So there is a total number of 8 movements in the Assyrian legacy, right?
That's right. Last time I was asked about it was before anybody had heard any of the movements. So it's kind of cool to come back, and I'm sure some of the audience have heard at least some of the first 4 movements. So in the interview that I gave in 2010, I said that the whole underlying theme of the Assyrian legacy is this underlying hope that we have as a nation, because we've had a really pretty terrible history. It's just one thing after another, sorrow. Yet our people still trudge on through, most recently through ISIS's invasion. You have people now fighting back. These people that were by all means down and out. So it's a testament to the human spirit, really, that, this microcosm of the Assyrian people really do represent the human condition, because we've been through it all. So the Assyrian legacy follows the history of the Assyrian people from the moments of greatness, the rise of the great empire, as you mentioned. The 4th movement is the fall of the empire. And that brings me to the 5th movement, which will be premiering this year. And it's kind of that same idea where these people are down and out in the early 1st century. And somehow they create a church that manages to evangelize much of Asia. And for the first millennium AD, serves as the equivalent, basically, of the Catholic Church today. It's the largest church in the world. So that's an amazing undertaking from these people that, for 600 years have not had a nation. So I tried to capture some of that in the piece, and it's so much to capture. It's difficult to do, but that's what Assyrian Legacy 5 is all about.
And George, if you don't mind me asking, what inspired you to bring in the choral parts, which is sung in our Lishana Atiqa in the Syriac language? What inspired you to just think of that and incorporate that into the movement?
Well, the liturgical language of the Church of the East is that Lishana Atiqa, and I know it's Badal Fat Aturaya have modernized the language, so it is more the Assyrian that we speak today. But I thought it would be cool to have this ancient sound heard in a very modern way. And I mean, I love doing stuff like that, where you take these tunes that maybe nobody's ever heard, and you make it listenable. You take it and you kind of translate it into the music of today, so people are like, "Oh wow, that's actually pretty cool music."
That's
So
exactly, I think, what you've done is you've given it a whole new dimension. And so for those viewers that are interested in hearing this, once again, this is the Assyrian Legacy, the fifth movement that George Somi has composed and has incorporated a choral section, which will be obviously performed by the Mesopotamian Night Choral Ensemble, that will be sung in the old Syriac language, in the Shana Atiqa. And we can't wait for the performance. George, I think you've outdone yourself. Of course, I think I tell you this each year when you when you are working on a project, but this is actually definitely the choir's favorite piece because it's not only challenging, but it's definitely us. It is they connect with it, and so it's really a beautiful work.
I'm really happy to hear that, and actually just want to shout out to the choir.
Yes,
Thank you
absolutely.
so much for, I know the ancient language is difficult. I don't personally understand much of it. You have Mshicha, everybody knows these like Maran and all these, Alaha, we all know these words, but the conjugations are all different, just the verbs are all different. And it's an incredible language.
It's a very beautiful language, and just to make sure that we actually consulted with a few people, right? So everything with regards to the pronunciation, to make sure that we pronounce it in the correct way, as well as the meaning, because you're right. The majority of it has to do with Jesus, and but. It's really eye-opening when you kind of look and see the similarity between the old language and the language that we speak today.
That's right.
It's a matter of just a few words, and it's really the same thing.
And if you read, the difference is that we silence.
That's correct.
Different letters in the words, so that for all intents and purposes, it really sounds like a different word, but when it's spelled out, it's literally the same word. We just chose to pronounce different letters in it.
That's exactly what it is.
So it's really cool that it does that.
Yes. George, so, in just this few minutes that we've been talking, we're able to demonstrate that you have, a wide kind of a palette for different genres of music. We mentioned that obviously, the Assyrian Legacy is a classical piece. I also mentioned that you worked on a ballet, which infuses some classical portions as well as some modern. And not only that, you've also arranged some classics from Assyrian singers. And so, if somebody asked you, what is your favorite? What do you think is your kind of your cup of tea, your forte, if you will, when it comes down to genres?
I absolutely love film music. That's the classical music of today, really, and I love the romantic sound of it. And I'm not talking so much the atonal stuff, the kind of stuff that you just that doesn't sound good.
Right.
But the sweeping melodies and the fanfare brass, it's just really exciting. And what I try to do in any one of my pieces is take a note from the great composers of past. I study, my favorite are the Russian Romantics, because I guess for as cold as it is in Russia, they need to make up for it somehow. So they have such warmth in their music. It's just incredible. So those are my huge inspirations from the classical era, like Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, Rimsky-Korsakov. They all have, Rimsky-Korsakov, in fact, has a book on orchestration, and he's pretty kind of stuck up, but I'll give him that. I mean, he should be stuck up. He's really good. And he just kind of lays out what he thinks the orchestra is, and why he thinks it should be that way. So I read that book, and I look at scores from that era, and it's just incredible. And just the genius. A lot of times when you're listening to the music, you don't realize it sounds great, and you love it, and then you open up the page and you read what these guys wrote, and it adds a whole nother dimension to it. I mean, I find myself smiling as I'm reading it in my head a little bit, and I'm like, I never heard that part, and then I hear it as the music goes, and I'm like, that's just incredible.
Wow.
So I take a note from them. The other thing is I take a big note from modern composers today, film composers. So I really love James Horner, who passed away last year. I was really bummed out. I mean, he just writes the most sweeping melodies. There's beautiful melodies. John Williams. These are huge names, you know, and even some lesser known names like John Powell, who really inspired me for one of the arrangements I did this year, Kosiyat Malkuta. So I take a note from a lot of composers, and yet I still manage to make it my own. I mean, I send my music to many of my friends, and the feedback I've gotten is like, that's you. I tell them, this is my inspiration, this guy, and like, yeah, I get it, but no, that's you. Like, we hear you in there. So it's kind of cool that I'm not just copying. That was kind of an affirmation, I guess.
George, as you mentioned, this year, once again, you not only are featuring one of the movements from the Assyrian legacy, the fifth movement, the Assyrian Church of the East, but also you are arranging 4 songs for our beloved singer, Linda George. Now, I want to kind of just ask you your opinion. You know, each time you're asked to arrange some of these Assyrian pop songs, is it a completely different experience? I mean, are you trying to just remake what somebody else did with newer sounds? Or do you also take that opportunity to say, wow, this sure would have sounded nice, if it was incorporated in the previous or in the original version? Do you take that opportunity to also beautify, if you will, that existing arrangement? Or do you just kind of do it apples for apples, if you will?
I definitely don't do it apples for apples. If anybody's heard my arrangements and just put them next to the original, it's just completely different, turned on its head. And there's reason behind the madness, method to the madness. The very first thing I do is I listen to the lyrics, and I ask myself, does this music convey what the lyrics are trying to convey? And if the answer is resoundingly no, then I try to step into the emotion of the original lyricist and kind of live what they're talking about. You know, it's, I guess, method acting for composers, sure. I guess.
Sure.
So that's what I do, and I think about it a while. One of my favorites that I did was Nishlat Chuma.
The classic Freddie Raya, yeah.
I just absolutely love that one because it's a really simple melody, and it's a beautiful melody, but it's really simple, and there's been a lot of people that have done a lot of different things with it.
Sure.
So again, I listened to those, and I kind of took it with a grain of salt. My main thing was I listened to the lyrics, and I'm like, what's this poem talking about? And I came up with, well, it's talking about this eagle basically flying over Assyria. And perhaps a person that is kind of having this bird's eye view of these ruined lands. And I said, you know, it would be really cool if I had this kind of like soaring feel. And I don't know what clicks in my head. You know, I think about, I have that in my head, and then one day I'll be walking, and I remember every time I come up with a breakthrough, I remember exactly where I was. So in the case of Nishal Tkume, I was at work, and I had gotten up from my chair, and as I'm walking, I start singing to myself, because I don't want to seem like a crazy guy, but I start singing the opening notes, and I'm like, that's it. So I run back to my cube, take out the marker, and start drawing on my whiteboard. This is it. This is it.
And just to make sure, this is at work, correct?
This is at work. I hope my boss isn't watching.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you definitely have a very different and obviously unique approach to each one of these arrangements, which I think for the audience will be a very refreshing change. Yes, the Yanisha Hume, I remember that from the Chicago event, right? Rachel Sarah Thomas had performed that song. Did a beautiful arrangement of it, and of course we are once again going to have that song this year at our event on August 19th, and we can't wait to hear how Linda will perform it at a live event.
Albeit it is a different arrangement.
Correct. Yes. You did not arrange that song for this event. Our friend Devin Farney arranged it, but nevertheless, I think the audience will be very pleased with the presentation. George, just out of curiosity, so does it change things when, you just mentioned, hey, sometimes, in my cube, or in my office, I'll write on the board. Writing for the purpose of yourself is different than writing with the intent of having something performed? Or for you, is it, hey, whenever I write, I automatically assume that someday it's going to be performed, and hence I incorporate a lot more kind of things into it, a lot more details into it, or is there a line between the two?
It's a very blurry line, I would say. The answer is I usually write with the intent of it being performed. So I do put in a lot of these details because it's kind of hard to step into your mind from like 5 years ago or whatever it is. I mean, and it's no different than any one of, whatever one of the viewers does for work. If you're working on something 5 years ago, you better finish it at that time, because 5 years from then you're not going to remember exactly what you were thinking.
Sure.
So I always write with the intent of being as complete as possible, and that's actually one of the things that I pull from engineering. My engineering background is we have to be so detailed. Obviously, because if we're not detailed, something blows up, and that's not an exaggeration.
That's not what.
So we're very detailed people. And that definitely translates into my music. I make sure to study how each instrument works. In fact, one year, I guess the violinist was angry at me for how I'd written it. So I started picking up books, and I'm like, this is just not working for me. I'm not really picking it up. So I picked up the violin myself, and I learned it, I think, reasonably well. And I stepped into the violinist's mind. And the very next time that I arranged something, the comment, there was a violinist that stepped out of the section, and she asked me, do you have a strings background? I'm like, not really. Why? Because that's like very comfortable. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that works.
That's great.
And I always write with the intent of it being performed, I guess, in a nutshell. Maybe that I wouldn't is perhaps I get hired to do some sort of like video game score or something where I know it's going to be, there's no orchestra, they don't have the budget for it. So I'll try to put in something in a sample file that works. And you can, get away with things on the computer that you obviously couldn't get away with in real life. A computer doesn't need to breathe. the strings. If you listen to a lot of the modern film music, you'll hear a lot of 16th note patterns, you know, in the violinists, and that's usually synthesized. That's not real,
Right.
because if you gave a violinist that part, they would kill you. They just wouldn't
Throw it
be
out.
able. They don't have the arm power to just keep doing this for so long, you know.
Sure.
So I guess that's the difference. Be careful of the electronic components of composition today, because they can lead you down. They can lead you astray.
Sure, sure. Point well taken. George, earlier you mentioned, you know, as I was asking you about how you got involved in Mesopotamian Night, you mentioned, well, I noticed that the Mesopotamian Night project had kind of started picking up speed and kind of, you know, really expanding. So, knowing what you know now today in your involvement in the Mesopotamian Nights events, would you say you're surprised by the amount of progress this event has made? And the other thing I'd be interested in knowing is if you had any suggestions or recommendations about the future of this event, how it can reach a wider audience, or perhaps the content of it, anything that you perhaps can suggest for the event.
Sure. Well, first point is Mesopotamian Night is incredible. Absolutely, hands down, one of the best projects Assyrians have done. I want to say in history, but you know, our history goes back a long way. So I'll say in modern history.
Very good.
So I was astonished. The first year I saw it was 2010. I had literally never been prouder to be
Wow.
than at that event, because the finale was, and I think it's similar each year, where you have you have two people on the stage wings come in, and they're flying these Assyrian flags and they're waving them.
Yes.
Pride, and the orchestra is usually playing some huge fanfare, and it's just it's an incredible image. It stokes an incredible feeling of this patriotism, I guess, and
That's wonderful.
it's just incredible. So I'm amazed. I was amazed at the get-go of what it was trying to do. In 2007, and 2010 blew my mind away.
That's great.
Because it was I think 40-piece orchestra in that concert, and I think the next one, that was the San Jose, kind of went a little smaller, and then 2013 is when we went to the California Theater for the first time.
That's correct.
This major venue at the heart of San Jose, California, one of the major cities of the United States, and it's our music being featured. That's incredible. And that was a 50-piece orchestra that year, and I don't know, it was like a 60-piece or 50-piece choir.
50 some odd. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, when I first heard those notes, you grabbed me and took me to the choir rehearsal, which I had not heard before. I mean, I had an idea of what it sounded like, maybe. And I remember sitting in my chair as the first note rang out, and I was literally taken aback in my chair because it was literally a wall of sound that hit me. It was incredible. And again, this is our music. This is our language finally being held up to this standard that much of the modern world has known for at least a century now. And it feels like I want to say we've caught up, but it's like we've even gone beyond that. It's just incredible.
Wow.
So I'm happy with the progress we've made. We've turned Assyrian music on its head and shown, if the world would just watch,
Sure.
that we are as worthy a member of this world as any other culture, if not more so, because of our incredible history and our just go on, trudge on, no matter what.
Fantastic.
So
beautiful. Very well put. Very well put. I love your answer, and I completely concur with everything you say. We have nothing we are nothing short of anybody else in this world when it comes down to the arts or our culture as far as that goes. So very nice. George, first of all, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you August 19th, not only seeing you in person, but also listening to your amazing compositions. I selected one piece from the 2013 events, which were the Shamiram Urshan songs. It's called Rishit Shita. So we're going to play that, and in doing so, I will wish you goodbye, and we shall see you in just a few days. And once again, thank you for being with us, George.
Thank you so much for having me.
گشخان موقع به اتلیهی بیاویتون مبسمه به دست همه در خورزن عدیا پریش خزمرتا قطع خون به قدمتخ شما ایل ریشت شیتا ملخمو و اخونن یقرا جورج سومی قد خورزت Mesopotamian Night خیاخی تباین متخره نوخن قد خورز داشیتا به دویا یومد رویتا اجاسه بدا یرخا یو آوانت کالیفورنیا تیتر و اتلیهی بی پتقو خون آویتون زوینه انزونیتون له هل دانا شوق نخون بشنب خزخ لخون شبت بیتایلا آویتون رابا باسیمه